Summary of A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. The story jumps back and forth between Ove's childhood and his life as a 59-year-old man in Sweden. When Ove was 8, his mother died. He moved in with his father and started working at the railroad with him. One day, Ove is sent to clean out a train car with Tom, a friend who is rude and only cares about himself. Ove finds a wallet with money in it, but instead of keeping it, he decides to give it back. The train chief gives Ove's dad a sob, which Ove and his dad fix together on Saturdays. When Ove is 16, his father dies, leaving him only the house and the sob. Ove quits school to work at the railroad like his father. When he starts getting letters telling him that the city wants to buy his house and tear it down, he decides to get a job at a building site and learn how to build houses so he can fix up his own. Tom says that Ove stole money, and because Ove won't say that Tom did it, he loses his job. Ove is hired back as a night cleaner on a long-distance train by the director. After Ove finished fixing up his house, it burns down a few weeks later. Ove can't put out the fire because men in white shirts are in the way. In town, Ove rents a room. Tom meets Ove at work a few days after his house burned down and steals his father's watch. Tom bothers Ove, so Ove punches him and takes back his watch. Tom never bothers Ove again. Ove wants to join the service, but he can't because he was born with a problem with his heart. He meets Sonia on a train not long after that. She rides to school because she wants to become a teacher. Ove rides the train with her for 3 months before she asks him to dinner. He says he lied about why he wanted to ride the train with her, but she doesn't care. She wants him to go to school for engineering so he can build houses. Sonia and Ove have been together for 3 years when Sonia's father dies. This makes Sonia very sad. Ernest, the cat Sonia had when she was a child, dies a week after her father. Sonia tells Ove that she is pregnant and wants to buy a house with him. The same day they move in, a couple named Rune and Anita also move into the same row house. Both Anita and Sonia are pregnant, and they become best friends. Rune and Ove share tools and built their kids' cribs together. Ove and Sonia go to Spain on a bus trip. The bus wrecks on the way home. Sonia has a miscarriage, and from the waist down she is paralyzed. Ove is determined to rebuild the house himself so that it can be reached by a wheelchair. Sonia gets a job teaching kids who are having trouble, and she teaches them all how to read Shakespeare. Ove fights with men in white shirts about the health of his wife until Sonia tells him to stop. After Rune's son is born, Ove and Rune fight about everything, from how to cut the grass to which heating system to put in the houses. The fight has been going on for almost 40 years, and Rune's decision to buy a BMW after his son moved to America was the last blow. Rune is told he has Alzheimer's after he buys the BMW. Sonia is told she has cancer 4 years before the present time. She works as long as she can, but she still dies, even though Ove keeps fighting guys in white shirts. In the present, Ove's boss at the housing office forces him to leave 6 months after Sonia's death. He plans to kill himself and go with Sonia. As usual, he walks around the neighborhood in the morning and sees that Blondeweed's dog is chasing a cat. He scares Blondeweed away by yelling at him. Later, as he is putting a hook in his ceiling so he can hang himself, his new neighbors, Patrick and Parvana, who is very pregnant, back their moving trailer right into Ove's house. Ove goes outside to scream at them and helps them move the trailer. Later, Nasanine and the youngest child, who is 7, bring Ove food. Ove chooses to wait until the next day to hang himself. The next day, Ove talks to a kid named Adrian and his friend Mirsad about a woman's bike that was parked in the wrong place. Patrick and Parvana bring cookies to Ove and ask to borrow a ladder and an Allen wrench. Ove gets angry and goes to get the things for them, and when Anita shows up in his yard, he is upset. She says the council will take Rune away from her, but Ove says that won't happen for years. Patrick sees wheel marks on Ove's floor. Anita tries to tell Patrick that Sonia had been in a wheelchair, but Ove yells at her. Ove slams the door and tries to hang himself, but the rope breaks. The next morning, when Ove goes around the neighborhood as usual, he kicks the cat. As he walks back to his garage, a man in a white shirt drives a Coda through the neighborhood and almost hits Ove. Ove yells at the car as it drives away. Blonde Rita seems strangely happy while her dog barks, and Patrick is getting ready to climb the dangerously placed ladder, which Ove notices. Ove is worried about the cat, but he keeps going with his new plan, which is to kill himself with car fumes. As he sits in his car and lets the fumes fill it up, he hears an ambulance and then someone banging on the garage door. When Ove finally opens the garage door, it hits Parvana right in the nose. She asks him to take her and her children to the hospital to see Patrick, who fell off a ladder. At the hospital, Ove and the parking clerk have a fight about how much it costs to park. Parvana leaves Ove in charge of the kids, and when the hospital clown tries to do a magic trick with one of Ove's coins, Ove hits the clown in the face. Nasanine thinks Ove is great, but Parvana and the 7-year-old are not as pleased. When they get back to their house, Parvana asks Ove to help her fix her heater. Ove is in agreement. The next morning, Ove goes to the train station without noticing that a snowdrift outside his house has a hole in the shape of a cat. As the train gets closer, Ove looks at the people on the station. As the train gets closer, a businessman passes out and falls onto the track. Ove swears at the man and pulls him off the path. Ove thinks he'll let the train kill him, but when he looks at the young train driver, he decides it would be rude to ruin his day. When Ove gets home, the white-shirt man almost hits him again. Ove sees the frozen cat in the snowdrift for the first time. Parvana also sees and screams at Ove to save the cat. She won't let go of the idea of bringing the cat to Ove's house to warm it up. Jimmy, Ove's young friend who is overweight, comes in and sits with them in Ove's living room. He warms up the cat with the heat from his body. When Parvana sees Ove's kitchen, she remembers that Sonia used a wheelchair. Jimmy gets sick from being around the cat, so Ove has to take him to the hospital. Ove agrees to keep the cat after Parvana talks him into it. The next day, Ove takes the cat to see Sonia's grave. Later that week, a reporter named Lena keeps bugging Ove to talk about how he saved the man at the train stop. In the end, Ove does lock Lena in his garage for a short time, but Parvana finds out about it. She tells Lena to give her a call. Ove agrees to drive Parvana to the hospital so Patrick and Jimmy can meet them there. Jimmy wants to stop at McDonald's on the way home from the hospital. So she can get her driver's license, Parvana asks Ove to teach her how to drive. When they get back to their street, Parvana gives Ove Nasanine a very colorful drawing of himself. The next day, Ove lets the cat out and thinks about taking Sonia's pills to kill himself. He goes outside when he hears the cat crying out in pain and finds Blondeweed about to kick the cat. Blondeweed walks away, and Ove goes to Rune and Anita's house to borrow some corrugated iron. He builds a trap for Blondeweed's dog that will electrocute it if it tries to pee on his stepping stones, but the cat gives him a look, so he takes it apart. Later, Adrian brings Ove's mail to the door and tells him that Sonia was his teacher. Ove offers to help Adrian fix his bike and take it to the cafe where Adrian works. Then, Ove goes to see Parvana and plans when their first driving lesson will be. Parvana didn't want to learn how to drive a car with a manual gear, so the lesson gets off to a bad start. At the first red light, Parvana stops the car and rolls back into an SUV driven by rude guys with neck tattoos. She loses her cool and gives up. Ove yells at the drivers of the SUVs and encourages Parvana. The next day, Ove and Parvana take the bike to where Adrian works, which is a cafe. Mirsad, Adrian's boss, meets Ove for the first time. When Ove sees that Mirsad is wearing makeup, he asks him in an insulting way if he's gay. Ove makes his own coffee with a filter, and he helps Adrian fix his bike. Adrian tells Ove not to tell the cafe's owner, Amel, that Mirsad is gay. The next day, Ove pulls out a gun to kill himself, but Parvana asks to use his bathroom and then puts him on the phone with Lena. Ove sees the man in the white shirt driving to Rune's house, so he yells at him. The man doesn't seem to care about Ove. When Patrick says yes, Ove parks his trailer in front of the man's coda. Later, the man asks Ove what he did, but Ove says he didn't do anything. Anita tells Ove that the council is going to take Rune later that week. Ove goes home, locks the door, and starts crying. Later that night, Ove takes off his clothes and gets ready to kill himself with a gun. Mirsad and Adrian show up at Ove's door and ask if Mirsad can stay the night. This is because Mirsad came out to Ove's father, Amel, and Amel kicked Mirsad out. Ove agrees that Sonia would have liked having Mirsad stay with her. The next morning, when Ove does his morning check, Mirsad goes with him. Jimmy comes over and tells Ove that this week they are taking Rune. He tells her that Anita has been trying to keep Rune for the last 2 years, but she didn't want Sonia to know. Patrick goes and gets their friend Anders, who runs a tow truck business. Anders tows the man's coda and tells him that he and Blondeweed are no longer together. Over the next few days, Ove and his neighbors make plans. At last, Ove calls someone. On the day Rune is transferred into care, the man in the white shirt comes to take him away, but everyone in the neighborhood backs Anita. Lena gives the man a stack of papers that show he has done wrong, and the man gives up. Lena finally gets Ove to agree to talk to her. When Ove eats dinner with Parvana and Patrick, he finds out that Patrick, who is only 7 years old, loves houses. The next day, he talks to Amel and tries to get him to accept that Mirsad is gay. The 7-year-old girl calls Ove to her birthday party and tells him that all she wants for her birthday is an iPad. After the birthday party, Ove goes to his neighbor's house and finds that thieves are there. He has a heart attack. When the doctor tells them that Ove's heart is too big, Parvana laughs and says that she is Ove's next of kin. Parvana helps Ove put Sonia's things away when he gets home from the hospital. In the evening, Parvana gives birth to a boy. Mirsad and Jimmy get married and adopt a daughter over the next few years. Ove passes away 4 years after Patrick and Parvana moved in. He gives each of Parvana's children and Jimmy's daughter 1 million kroner, which is about $100,000. Parvana and Patrick use the rest of Ove's money to start a charity for children who have lost their parents. Over 300 people show up to mourn Ove. In the evening, Parvana shows a couple Ove's house. The lady is pregnant, and her husband drives a Saab.
About the author. Fredrik Backman was born on June 2, 1981, in the Swedish town of Söderort, which is south of Stockholm. He wrote for the Swedish newspaper Helsingborgs Dagblad when he was young. In 2009, he started a blog, which is where the first parts of A Man Called Ove were posted. Backman's first book was called A Man Named Ove. Things My Son Needs to Know About the World is his second book. It has not been turned into English, but it has been well accepted in Sweden. On the other hand, A Man Called Ove became a big hit quickly. Since it came out, it has been turned into more than 25 languages, and in 2015, it was made into a movie. Since then, Backman has written several books and keeps adding to his blog. He lives with his wife and 2 kids in Sweden.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.